Alright, how's it going, guys? Today's video will be different from my normal content because with this video I'm doing another review which I haven't done in around 5 months or so. Now, as you can see on the screen, I'm gonna be reviewing Ninja Gaiden 4. And first off, before I start, what do I think about this game? I personally think that it is absolutely fucking awesome. But with that being said, it is still very flawed in a few different aspects. But yeah, I might as well just get right into actually talking about the game. And I'll start off with easily the most important aspect in this game, and any game really, which is the gameplay.
Fuck off.
First off, I gotta say that the gameplay in Ninja Gaiden 4 is extremely fun, fast-paced, and brutal, which compared to a lot of M-rated games made now, and especially God of War 2018, if you remember that game's pixie dust, is extremely uncommon, because of course in our wonderful society of soyed out individuals, having a bit of edginess in a video game might be a little offensive, but I guess what isn't these days, right? Anyway, Ninja Gaiden 4 offers you 4 weapons to use, or I guess 5 if you count Ryu, which I'll talk more about him later. Now, I'm sure you already notice a problem, which is that this game only has 5 weapons. If you compare it with a game like Ninja Gaiden 2, which has 9 weapons, or 11 if you want to count the ranged weapons, then it's definitely not a large number. So yeah, I'm not sure why they made this decision when there was a big variety of weapons in the older games. But anyway, to talk about the weapons in this game, easily my favorite out of these is the drill, which I can definitely say that the reason behind this is because not only is this weapon extremely fast, but I also just like the kill animations. Now, as far as the function of the weapon goes, its base form essentially functions as a rapier, which of course, if you know what a rapier is, that'll involve a lot of stabbing. There's then the drill form, which you activate with, I think it's called Ninpo. I could be completely wrong about that, but anyway, this form is where I find this weapon the most fun. And well, if you see it on the screen, then you can see why. There's then also, I think it's called the bloodbath gauge. This lets you get instant kills with the current weapon you're using when you fill it up. Now, in the case of the drill, filling up the gauge lets you thrust through an enemy with it. What sets it apart from the other weapons is that the bloodbath kill for the drill is much better to use against bosses or singular tanky enemies. Not necessarily for a crowd of enemies, but you know, I guess it looks sick as fuck, so there we go. One of the other weapons, which is the first weapon you get in the game, and is pretty much the twin swords from the previous games, is my second favorite weapon and is pretty good for crowd control, at least in its blood raven form. And why do I love this weapon so much? Because you can decapitate motherfuckers, that's why. There's also the blood raven form, which turns into one big sword, and then when you do the bloodbath kill, Yakumo slashes the sword in a circular motion, and as I said, this is one of the better ones for killing groups of enemies because of the length of the sword. The third weapon you get in the game is essentially the lunar from the other games, but it also has a hammer form. I'm not going to talk too much about this weapon, but when it comes to its function, it feels similar to the twin swords. And then the last weapon you get is pretty much like the Pandora's bots from DMC. What makes this much different from all the other weapons is that it's good for killing flying enemies because you get shurikens and bombs, and you know, generally just as good at killing enemies from a range. Now, while I found this weapon fun to use, I'd say that I personally don't care to use it that much in comparison to the other weapons. There's also a skill you can get in the game where if your attack connects at the same time as an enemy is attacking, you get to execute a skill called Blinding Flash. And while it is called parrying, luckily it's not like Sekiro slob, thank God, so don't worry about that. But anyway, now that I've talked about all the other weapons, I might as well comment on the other playable character, which as I said before is Ryu. When it comes to Ryu, that's where it felt like the developers half-assed it, because not only does he just have one weapon, which if you remember Ninja Gaiden 3, then I'm sure you remember that they made the same mistake in that game, but you really just go through the same areas and even fight the same bosses as him, with an exception of one new boss fight. Quite honestly, when I was playing as Ryu, I felt like the devs just put him in to remind people that they're playing Ninja Gaiden, rather than him actually being intended to be put in the game. As far as Ryu's gameplay goes, the one weapon you get with him is the Dragon Sword, where you use, I guess, the Blood Raven even gauge. I'll just call it that. You do essentially what I would call the Virgil judgment cut, for lack of a better way to describe it. You can also use various different ninpo, which I personally never used any of these, but I guess it's there if you want to use it. The game also does give you the option after you finish it to play as either Yakumo or Ryu in any mission, which if Ryu was given more weapons, I'd probably consider playing as him again, but honestly, I'm just gonna stick with Yakumo because he has an actual variety of weapons. And that's kind of the problem with Ryu in this game. It's that he overstays his welcome after like one mission, and at that point I just wanted to go back to playing as Yakumo. And I'm pretty sure you play as Ryu for around 4 missions if I remember, so yeah, you can do the math on that one, and I'm sure you'd be able to figure out how long that takes. Anyway, the last thing I will be talking about as far as the gameplay in Ninja Gaiden 4 goes is the platforming. And what do I think about the platforming? Personally, I'm happy just killing shit, but I also don't mind it because it does mix things up a bit, and that's definitely the intention behind it. Now, there are a few different types of platforming segments you will go through, and the main ones are the surfing sections, the rail grinding sections, and the flying sections. The only thing that really annoyed me is that with some of these rail grinding sections, there are oncoming trains which can get a bit annoying, but other than that, they're not too bad. But yeah, overall, as I said, I really do like the gameplay of Ninja Gaiden 4, which it would definitely be worrying if I didn't like the gameplay. But anyway, I think I've said just about everything I need to say about the gameplay, so next we'll get into the story.
Fuck off.
The story of Ninja Gaiden 4, in short, really doesn't matter in the slightest. It's pretty much what you'd expect from any standard video game story. Now, obviously, I will be getting into spoilers in this section if you somehow care, so click off the video at this point if you do. Anyway, how it starts is that Yakumo has to infiltrate a base in order to kill Sayori, the priestess, because it's believed that in doing so, he'll stop the toxic rain from the Dark Dragon's husk that pours over Tokyo. He finds out, though, after Sayori tells him that if he kills her, nothing will change because he first has to remove the seals. Now, how many seals there were, I can't remember, but yeah, that's basically the story. You go and remove the seals, Sayori gets murked after you find out that one of the characters is actually a great fiend, and then you kill the Dark Dragon. Again, the story is nothing special, so it definitely won't be winning any awards in that aspect, but it is a video game, so again, it's not really something I was expecting. As far as Yakumo himself goes as a character, I personally don't mind him. A lot of people wanted a Ryu, which hey, a Ryu-centric game would definitely be nice, but again, I do not mind Yakumo, and it seems that Platinum wanted to target the teenage consumer base with this character, which hey, they hit that target demographic. Anyway, let's move on to talking about the music.
Fuck off.
When it comes to the soundtrack of Ninja Gaiden 4, I'd say that I like it for the most part, but overall it doesn't quite compare to the music of the older Ninja Gaiden games. Now, when you listen to the music in this game, you could probably draw a lot of comparisons with Metal Gear Rising, and in a lot of ways, this game feels like a spiritual successor to that game, and that can definitely either be a good or bad thing depending on who you ask. The game, for the most part, has a lot of music that I guess could be considered electrical or rock, with some orchestral music here and there, which mainly plays in the background while you're playing as Yakumo, so in that sense it fits with that sort of futuristic theme. Personally, I liked Ryu's tracks a lot more, and when you play as Ryu, the music sounds much more like what you would traditionally hear from Ninja Gaiden. Now, I am not a Ninja Gaiden super fan, so I could sound like a complete idiot saying this, but I'm pretty sure quite a bit of the music is taken straight from the older games, but as I said, I do like most of the music in Ninja Gaiden 4. Something that is a bit weird is that I guess the devs aren't very good at sound mixing, so I couldn't hear the music very well while I was playing the game, but if you fuck around with the settings a bit, which I did by turning all the other volume settings aside from the music to 50, it starts to sound how I personally think it should have sounded. I don't think there's much more I can say about the music though, because it's not really a major aspect of this game, so I will move on to talking about the environments.
Fuck off.
The level design of Ninja Gaiden 4 is where I'd say this game falls short, because there's really not much that's memorable about the levels in this game aside from a few areas, with one of those being a level where you're in a I guess you could say, disco area. The problem with the level design is that it all just looks the same throughout most of the levels, and there's not really anything that catches your eye. Compare this to Ninja Gaiden 2, where you visit a lot of cooler areas, or Ninja Gaiden 1, which has well thought out levels, and it doesn't do that well in that aspect. I also just have to mention it, and I can't stand that every modern game does it, but there's also the yellow paint in this game. Now, why they put yellow paint in a game this linear, I do not know, because it's honestly like putting yellow paint around every corner in a game like Final Fantasy 13, which is a literal hallway simulator. But I have seen how some people can't solve some really easy puzzles in Portal, so maybe there are people out there who really are just too fucking stupid, which it's a very scary thought that these people can vote just like you and me. But anyway, when it comes to this game's level design, I'm definitely reminded of DMC5, which is someone who does like DMC5. I can say with absolute certainty that it has some absolutely shit level design. I will be fair to Ninja Gaiden 4 though. It does have better levels, but I guess it's not the highest bar. Anyway, I don't think there's really anything more to say about Ninja Gaiden 4, so we'll now be moving on to the conclusion.
Fuck off.
Overall, and I can't stress this enough, I absolutely recommend Ninja Gaiden 4. Whether you buy it at full price, whether you buy it on a deep sale, or fuck, whether you pirate it, you genuinely need to play this game. I'd go so far as to say that you are doing yourself a disservice if you don't play Ninja Gaiden 4. Especially if you like those old, edgy hack and slash games, which this game is very similar to. And I can say that I'm not just shilling this game because of the assets, but that definitely is a big aspect, if you know what I mean. I even just like replaying levels while I'm listening to a stream or some shit in the background, which I can definitely say that's a good sign. I wish more games were made like this, and despite being from the Fortnite generation, I can still remember when video games were good, as shocking as that may sound. I have not had this much fun with a video game for this entire year, and probably even the past few years. So what rating would I give this game? I'm gonna have to give it an 8.5. I genuinely really do like this game, and you know, as they say, a review is just the reviewer's glorified opinion. As I said though, I really do want more games like this, and Ninja Gaiden 4 is a game where they finally did hack and slash right, which compared to another game that came out this year, which is Lost Soul Aside from the wonderful country of China that turned out to be absolute dog shit, this feels like a breath of fresh air, which, you know, in an age where most games released are now complete and utter sewage, filled with ugly characters, LGBT bullshit, feminist bullshit, or whatever else that's downright evil, I am really happy with this game. Unfortunately, this game allegedly sold like complete shit because Microsoft does fuck all to advertise their games. So whether we'll get more games like this remains to be seen, with Microsoft again not knowing how to market, and also people loving their Souls slop. But anyway guys, that's the end of the video, and again, I just have to shill Ninja Gaiden 4 because honestly, I can't shill it enough. Like dude, play that fucking shit right now. But yeah, anyway, bye.